But I want to come out and apologise because I feel, it's appropriate to make that apology to the people who came to the press conference and the viewing audiences. I sincerely apologise, and I'll try and improve.
He just smacked the fucking table. There's 4 fighters on that stage who are literally half the age of this man, and yet he is the man who everyone is fucking terrified.
John Fury just got absolutely humiliated and had to publicly apologize after Carl Froch destroyed him with pure composure. We're talking about a complete power shift here. The man who flipped tables, made threats, and acted like he owned the room just got slapped with a $100,000 fine and is now begging for forgiveness. But here's what nobody's talking about. This wasn't just some random outburst that got out of hand. This was a calculated takedown by the Cobra, and John Fury walked straight into the trap. Carl Froch sat there, cool as ice, while Fury lost his absolute mind, and now we're watching the aftermath of what happens when you mess with a true champion who knows exactly how to play the mental game.
Quite, if I was a bit of a snowflake, then I'd have been upset, I'd have been offended by it, because he was threatening, he was calling it on, and he was saying basically watch your back, and you don't want to go back to prison. So he needs to be careful, doesn't he? I mean, he's talking about going back to prison, so he's putting loose threats out there for me.
So let's break down exactly what happened at that press conference, because the footage tells a story that goes way deeper than just some angry dad flipping furniture. Carl Froch made his comments about the Fury family sharp, calculated, designed to get under the skin, and John Fury took the bait completely. But here's the kicker. Froch knew exactly what he was doing. He's been in this game for decades, faced down some of the most dangerous fighters on the planet, and he understands psychology better than most sports psychologists. While Fury was steaming and building up to his explosion, Froch was already 3 moves ahead, staying composed because he knew the cameras were rolling and the boxing board was watching. That's championship-level thinking right there.
Good morning, people. Just want to make a quick apology for my inappropriate language yesterday. It's unacceptable. I accept that. But emotions run high, we get involved, and it is the fight game. It was pandemonium. But let me sincerely apologise for my outburst of language. I wasn't alone doing it, but I want to come out and apologise because I feel, it's appropriate to make that apology to the people who came to the...
And get this, the moment John Fury flipped that table and made physical contact, Carl Froch didn't even flinch. Think about that for a second. A man who's built his reputation on being unpredictable and intimidating just charged at him, and the Cobra didn't move a muscle. That's not just confidence, that's complete psychological dominance. Froch has been in real wars with killers like Mikkel Kessler and Andre Ward. You think some furniture flying around is going to rattle him. Meanwhile, Fury's showing everyone exactly how to lose control on the biggest stage possible. And it's all being recorded for posterity.
And if he does it again and he's over, he's going to get fined again. And I don't know if it's by the pound, by the ounce, what he's getting fined for, but it's an expensive...
But wait, it gets worse for John Fury. The boxing board didn't just slap him on the wrist, they hit him with a $100,000 fine. That's not pocket change, that's a mortgage payment. That's a clear message from the establishment that this kind of behavior crosses every line they've drawn. And you know what Carl Froch had to pay? Nothing. $0. Because while chaos was erupting around him, he maintained his professionalism and let the authorities handle it exactly the way they should. The contrast couldn't be more obvious. One man acting like a seasoned professional, the other acting like he's never been to a press conference before.
Of the king of the world. I think he's referring to Tyson Fury. When you have kids, most people, when they want to talk about their children, they might pull their mobile phone out and show a few pictures. Big John just shows you his balls. That's where they came from. If there's anyone who needs a Manscaped advert, it's fucking John Fury.
Now here's where it gets absolutely wild. After all that tough guy posturing after flipping tables and making threats, John Fury is now publicly apologizing. The same man who was ready to fight the world last week is now eating humble pie and trying to walk back everything he did. Johnny Nelson called it perfectly, do it again and you pay again. That fine wasn't just punishment, it was a warning shot that landed exactly where it needed to. And through all of this, Carl Froch hasn't said a word about the apology. He doesn't need to. His silence is more powerful than any victory speech because everyone can see who really won this confrontation.
So there will be an appeal taking place. So that fine could be reduced or it could be increased. it goes in front of a completely independent appeal steward.
Listen to this part, because this is where the story gets even more embarrassing for Fury. The ridicule has started creeping in from every corner of the boxing world. What looked like intimidating behavior in the moment is now becoming a punchline. Social media is roasting him, boxing analysts are shaking their heads, and even people who initially defended the passion are now admitting it went too far. Carl Froch predicted this would happen. He knew that losing control in public always backfires, especially when you're dealing with someone who refuses to take the bait and sink to your level.
Froch on fine, because I'm quite sure Carl's going to rip the life out of John after today. I think John did a job. John did a job and got the excitement going, got people talking. That's exactly what he did.
And here's something nobody's mentioning. There was actual physical contact involved. This wasn't just yelling and table flipping for show. Robert Smith confirmed that Fury made physical contact, which is exactly why the board stepped in so hard with that fine. We're not talking about heated words or passionate arguments anymore. We're talking about a man who crossed the line into physical confrontation at a professional boxing event. Meanwhile, Carl Froch kept his hands to himself and let his presence do the talking. That's the difference between a true champion and someone who lets emotion override common sense.
You honestly think if these two come together like this, well, you know what's going to happen?
So what you going?
I'm going to keep them apart by a wall of security.
But here's the thing that really exposes what happened here. Frank Warren, who's seen every kind of drama the boxing world can produce, said this chaos was completely unnecessary. When you already have a massive fight to promote, you don't need circus acts taking over the press conference. The table flipping overshadowed the actual boxing, which is exactly what Carl Froch understood from minute one. He came there to promote a fight and build anticipation, not to create some reality TV moment that would get someone fined and embarrassed. Warren's reaction tells you everything about how the boxing establishment views this kind of behavior.
Is that John Fury and Carl Froch on the cobbles will be fun. I think they both have a good fun doing that, but I'm sure it's all fun and games. They like to say what they...
Hold up, did you catch what happened with the security situation? Eddie Hearn didn't mess around. He brought in a wall of security because everyone knew things could explode around Carl Froch. But here's the difference that separates legends from loudmouths. Froch talks tough, stands his ground, and creates tension, but he stays completely composed while doing it. The security wasn't there because anyone was afraid of Froch losing control. It was there because other people lose control around him. That's the mark of someone who knows how to get inside heads without ever crossing professional boundaries.
To say something that's controversial, and they're two big characters, and we love having them around the...
Now listen to this, because Adam Smith tried to frame some of this as fun and games, but let's be completely honest about what we witnessed. Carl Froch built his career on strong opinions and straight talk. That's part of his identity as the Cobra. But he keeps everything verbal and controlled, even when he's cutting deep. The moment tables start flying and fines start landing, it stops being entertainment and becomes a liability. That $100,000 penalty isn't fun money. It's a consequence that follows you around. Froch stayed within the boundaries of boxing theater while John Fury stepped way outside them and had to publicly apologize for it.
And John Fury went straight for him. I'm not quite sure what he was going to do if he got to him, but I guess that was the entertainment from the press conference.
And get this detail that confirms everything we suspected. Oladipo saw it clearly. John Fury went straight for Carl Froch. That wasn't staged drama or promotional theater. That was real tension boiling over into real confrontation. But here's the key point that separates champions from everyone else. Froch didn't chase, didn't panic, didn't overreact to any of it. He stood firm and let the situation play out exactly how he knew it would. That composure is what you get from someone who's been in actual wars inside the ring and understands the difference between controlled aggression and losing your mind in public.
John Fury, Carl Froch, who wins that one?
Difficult one to call, that. Really? You got to go with the Cobra. You got to go with the Cobra, mate.
Really?
The Cobra's dangerous. He's still in shape. 48 years of age.
John's standing over there behind you.
You got to go with John Fury. Yeah, no, it kicked off a little bit. But it wasn't only Carl Froch that he went into either, did he? He actually went into Lennox Lewis as well. He started steaming into Lennox Lewis a little bit, and I go, whoa, who wins that?
Here's where the respect factor becomes obvious. Even in the middle of all that chaos, Spencer Oliver was leaning toward the Cobra. 48 years old and still in fighting shape, still dangerous, still commanding respect from people who know what real fighters look like. That says everything about Carl Froch's presence and reputation. When John Fury started going after legends like Lennox Lewis too, it stopped being about rivalry and became about reckless emotion taking over common sense. The Cobra doesn't need to shout about fighting anyone, because his legacy speaks louder than any threat ever could.
Saying that I condone that behaviour, because I don't. You can't, it's impossible to. But John is my mate, I've got respect for him, I respect the family, we're cool. So, you're never going to hear me say a bad word about it, but at the same time, obviously, no. It's probably not the Steve Bunce thing, I thought, bloody hell. Didn't like it.
But wait, it gets even more telling when you hear Dave Allen's take on this. Allen tries to stay respectful and loyal, but even he can't defend what happened at that press conference. When someone who wants to support you can't even make excuses for your behavior, that tells you everything about how far over the line things went. Carl Froch didn't need any theatrics to make his point or establish his authority. He stood his ground, made his statements, and let the proper authorities deal with the fallout. That $100,000 fine wasn't personal revenge, it was professional accountability.
He's very, very, very passionate around his sons when they're fighting, and it gets something out of him. I spoke to him, right, literally face to face, and I said, well, you know, what is upset? He said, I don't want people calling me out because I'll take any man.
Gareth Davies talks about passion like it's some kind of excuse, but passion doesn't give you a free pass to lose control at professional events. Everyone in boxing is passionate about what they do. Carl Froch built an entire career on intensity, grit, and raw emotion, but he channeled all of that inside the ropes where it belongs. Getting called out verbally is part of this sport and always has been. Responding by flipping furniture and making physical contact is crossing into completely different territory. The fine forced some serious reflection, and the public apology confirmed that even John Fury knows he went too far.
Having a go at the Furies probably over his time on his channel, maybe, I'm guessing, and John didn't like that and wants to have a fight with him, something like that.
It was something like that. I don't think he was still necessarily turning down a fight.
What I do know is that John Fury and Carl Froch on the cobbles will be fun. I think they're both.
Now here's what Adam Smith got absolutely right about this whole situation. Carl Froch has never been afraid to speak his mind, and when he made those comments about the Fury family, John Fury reacted with pure fury, literally. But Froch's approach is never reckless or uncontrolled. He knows exactly how to push buttons and create tension without crossing professional lines or legal boundaries. Unlike John Fury, who completely lost control of himself at a press conference and paid a hefty $100,000 fine for it, Carl Froch stayed composed and commanding throughout the entire confrontation. He lets his words do the damage while others act out and embarrass themselves.
Be around people just to show them what hunger is and desire is, and when you're at the top, to show them to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Hopefully they learn, it rubs off on them.
And here's something that really puts this in perspective. When you listen to Tyson Fury talk about hunger and discipline, the contrast with his father's behavior couldn't be more obvious. Carl Froch embodies that focus and mental hunger that comes with being a true champion. His intelligence and composure show what real professional discipline looks like under pressure. John Fury's outburst cost him $100,000 and his reputation. While chaos grabbed headlines for a day, Carl Froch's example shows that true dominance comes from control and precision, not from throwing furniture around like a child having a tantrum.
John Fury was doing that and goading Carl Froch, and I know John Fury doesn't like Carl Froch. Carl Froch mentions him, although I haven't really watched much of Carl Froch's videos lately. But Carl Froch, I know, has mentioned John Fury in the past. He's had a go with John Fury. They actually talked about having an actual, was it an exhibition or a boxing type match? And John Fury, the, any man, any time, was saying words to the effect of, oh, I'll fight you, Carl Froch, but the money has to be right. And Carl Froch basically said, all right, well, if we arrange payment,
Listen to what Liam Carl observed about how differently Carl Froch operates compared to most fighters. He doesn't escalate situations recklessly. He negotiates with intelligence and maintains his integrity even under pressure. When confronted with John Fury's aggressive style, Froch kept things professional and even suggested turning potential conflict into a planned exhibition for charity. Compare that approach with John Fury's impulsive actions that led to a $100,000 fine and public humiliation. Froch demonstrates why experience and restraint matter more than raw emotion, and why respect for the sport should always outweigh personal ego.
Online and do videos, but not expect someone to say anything when you see someone. So I don't know. Listen, my dad's got his ways and his points, and 90% of the time he's half right, but listen.
Shane Fury's reaction perfectly sums up the entire environment around this situation. Online jabs and social media videos can stir up tempers, but face-to-face accountability is a completely different story. Carl Goff understands this dynamic better than almost anyone in boxing. He never crosses physical lines, but he communicates powerfully and controls whatever room he's in. John Fury let emotion completely dominate his judgment and ended up paying a massive fine for it. This incident proves that experience, composure, and calculated responses command real respect, while losing control just makes you look unprofessional and costs you money. So here's what we learned from this entire mess. John Fury's table flip and public outburst might have made headlines for a few days, but Carl Froch commanded lasting respect through composure, intelligence, and sheer professional presence. That $100,000 fine proved that actions have real consequences, and that true authority comes from control, not from chaos and theatrics. The boxing world got to witness the contrast between emotional reaction and strategic thinking, between impulsiveness and calculated response. Carl Froch continues to show why he's not just a former champion, but a master of the mental game who understands how to win confrontations without ever losing his dignity. Do you think John Fury learned his lesson from this expensive mistake? Or is this just the beginning of more drama between these two? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button if this breakdown helped you understand what really went down. And make sure you subscribe with notifications on, because the boxing world never stops delivering wild moments like this one. But here's what makes this situation even more fascinating. The psychological warfare didn't end with that press conference. Carl Froch has been playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, and that $100,000 fine was just the opening move in a much bigger game. Think about it. Froch knew exactly what would happen when he made those calculated comments about the Fury family. He understood that John Fury's temperament would lead to an explosive reaction, and he positioned himself perfectly to come out looking like the composed professional while Fury self-destructed in front of the cameras. That's not luck. That's decades of experience reading people and understanding exactly which buttons to push. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The boxing community's reaction has been split, but the people who matter most, the promoters, the board officials, the veteran fighters, they all see exactly what happened here. Carl Frampton came out and said what everyone was thinking. There's a difference between promoting a fight and completely losing your professionalism. When you've got former world champions calling out your behavior, that's not just criticism, that's the boxing establishment drawing a clear line in the sand. Carl Froch didn't need to say a single word in response because the entire sport was speaking for him. And get this detail that nobody's talking about. The timing of John Fury's apology reveals everything about the power dynamic here. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't in the heat of the moment when emotions were running high. It came after the fine hit, after the ridicule started pouring in, after the reality of the consequences became crystal clear. That delay shows this wasn't some heartfelt moment of genuine remorse. This was damage control, pure and simple. Meanwhile, Carl Froch has maintained his position throughout this entire saga without backing down an inch or offering any apologies for speaking his mind. That's the confidence that comes with knowing you stayed on the right side of every line that matters. But wait, there's another layer to this that makes Carl Froch's strategy even more brilliant. By staying composed and professional, he's forced everyone to focus on the substance of what he originally said about the Fury family instead of getting distracted by theatrical nonsense. His comments about Tyson's mental state, about the family dynamics, about their approach to boxing, all of that is still out there, still being discussed, still getting under their skin. The table flip was supposed to shut down that conversation and make Froch look like the bad guy. Instead, it amplified everything he said and made John Fury look completely unhinged in the process. Here's something that shows just how deep this psychological victory goes. John Fury's reputation in boxing circles has taken a massive hit from this incident. People who used to see him as passionate and protective now see him as unstable and unprofessional. That $100,000 fine isn't just money. It's a permanent mark on his record that says he can't handle pressure without losing control. Carl Froch, on the other hand, has enhanced his reputation as someone who can deliver devastating verbal shots while maintaining complete composure under fire. In terms of public perception, this wasn't even close to a fair fight. And here's where the long-term implications become really fascinating. This incident has created a template for how to handle the Fury family's intimidation tactics. Carl Froch just showed the entire boxing world that you don't need to back down or get drawn into their chaos. Stay professional, speak your truth, let them overreact, and watch as the boxing establishment sides with composure over theatrics every single time. That $100,000 fine wasn't just punishment for John Fury. It was validation for everyone who believes in handling business the right way. Now listen to this, because the financial aspect tells a story that goes way beyond just the immediate penalty. $100,000 is serious money, even for someone connected to a heavyweight champion. But the real cost isn't just that fine. It's all the opportunities that might disappear because promoters and broadcasters now see John Fury as a liability. When you're known as someone who can't control themselves at press conferences, when you're the guy who needs extra security and creates expensive problems, your value in the promotional side of boxing drops significantly. Carl Froch's composure, meanwhile, makes him more valuable as a commentator, analyst, and presence at boxing events. Here's something that proves Carl Froch's mental dominance in this situation. The man didn't even need to throw a punch or raise his voice to completely neutralize someone with John Fury's reputation for intimidation. Think about that for a second. John Fury has spent years building this image as someone you don't want to cross, someone who will flip tables and make threats when his family gets criticized. But Carl Froch absorbed everything he could dish out, stayed completely calm, and watched as Fury destroyed his own credibility in front of the entire boxing world. That's not just winning a confrontation, that's exposing someone's supposed strength as their greatest weakness. And get this, the ripple effects are still spreading through the boxing community. Young fighters watching this unfold are learning valuable lessons about professionalism and how to handle pressure. Promoters are taking notes about which personalities add value to their events and which ones create expensive headaches. Broadcasters are seeing the difference between compelling television and liability-creating chaos. Carl Froch has positioned himself as the gold standard for how to be tough, direct, and uncompromising while still maintaining the respect of everyone who matters in the sport. But here's what makes this victory even more impressive. Carl Froch achieved all of this without compromising any of his principles or backing down from his original position. He didn't apologize, didn't soften his stance, didn't try to make peace for the sake of public relations. He stood by every word he said about the Fury family and let the consequences play out exactly as he knew they would. That's the kind of authentic strength that can't be faked or manufactured. When you're genuinely confident in your position and your ability to handle whatever comes your way, you don't need to resort to table-flipping theatrics to make your point. Now here's where the psychological aspect gets even more interesting. John Fury's public apology isn't just admitting he was wrong about his behavior. It's acknowledging that Carl Froch's approach was superior. Every word of that apology reinforces the idea that composure beats chaos, that professionalism trumps theatrics, and that real strength doesn't need to prove itself by destroying furniture. Carl Froch didn't just win this confrontation. He got his opponent to publicly validate his entire philosophy about how these situations should be handled. And here's the kicker that shows just how completely Carl Froch dominated this entire situation. The boxing world is now talking about him as someone who can handle any personality, any pressure, any attempt at intimidation without breaking a sweat. That's incredibly valuable currency in a sport where mental warfare is just as important as physical ability. Meanwhile, John Fury is now known as the guy who lost control, paid a massive fine, and had to apologize for his behavior. The contrast in their reputations coming out of this incident couldn't be more dramatic or more permanent.